Hi, I'm Andrew from Creative Guitar Studio, and this weekend we had quite a number of messages that came into the studio, both off our YouTube channel and off the website, that people were really curious about more information about the cage theory and about scales in general. I guess because last week we had done the video on the cage theory system, and people were kind of wondering how it could evolve from the chord concepts that we had covered to go directly over the world of scales and arpeggios and so forth. So we're going to look in this video today about how to practice scales properly. I have two questions that I decided to pick as sort of just the main preface to how we're going to go over this stuff. Now, the first question came from Colin Smith in England, and he wrote in, he said, "You touched on the cage chord theory, but can you tell me the scales that go along with the chord shapes?" So that is certainly what we're going to do for sure today. And the next question comes from, and pardon me if I got your name wrong, man, Faisal, I believe it is. He's from New Delhi, India. He wrote in, he says here, "I've been practicing the major scale positions on the guitar in the key of G, and I've learned all 5 positions over the fingerboard. I understand that these positions are movable across the fingerboard, but I fail to understand why I would want to learn so many positions. I know it can seem overwhelming, but anyway, he goes on here to say, how should I make the best use of the memorized scale positions to improvise and create music? I don't want to have practiced all these scales and not be able to make any music out of them." And I completely understand where you're coming from. I remember when I first started getting into practicing scales, it was an enormous amount of work I felt, and I did it for a long time. I remember reading a Guitar Player magazine article, I think it was something like Steve Vai's 24-hour workout or something, whatever it was, it's overwhelming workout anyway, the way I thought of it. And, the amount of time, he was suggesting to go into things like scales and fretboard layout work, and I just thought it was like, wow, how do you ever even fit in this much work in your life, But, I just kept really diligent with it, and I created a system for myself of practicing, and I probably practiced scales for maybe, very, very intently for over 2 years for sure. It's not just the rote idea of practicing where you're doing the work across the fretboard in the various positions. It's more than that. It's also involving using jam tracks and improvising over top of different kinds of musical situations in all kinds of styles and ideas, incorporating things like modes and incorporating work with combining scales and arpeggios and a lot of lateral along the neck work. So that kind of stuff is just it's integral. You have to do a lot of work on it before you feel really free. And at the outset of this video, I did sort of I just was goofing around in the key of G major, and I just did some runs, and I was kind of trying to work very, laterally along the neck, Just like that, just kind of looking at a few ways of carrying on some kind of melodic concept I might have had in my mind, and just try to work very in a very improvised and free way along my neck, and I just tried to make something that sounded kind of congruent in some way. So it was very, very off the cuff and improvised, but I did it so that you could see how I just was moving along the neck, and I was never really locked into one box shape or one position. And that's what the intensive work on the scales really does for you. So I want to start this whole lesson plan off today by going to the dry erase board, to this piece of paper that I've got up on here, and I want to begin talking about the various 5 scale patterns, starting with pattern number 1. And the first thing I want you to understand is how pattern 1 interlocks to pattern 2, then to pattern 3, 4, and then 5. Through learning all 5 shapes, you wind up getting, very clear cut picture in your mind of working within a key, one, scale in one key across the whole fretboard, so that when you're playing a solo or doing some jamming, the whole guitar fretboard is just one big friendly, happy place to your fingers to blast through all the correct tones. But like I was getting at, the main thing I need you to begin seeing in the beginning is how the tail end of a pattern coming and preceding before the next upcoming pattern actually shares a series of tones with the next pattern. You can see these two bass tones and then this cluster of tones right here, and then these top two are all located in this upcoming pattern number 2 shape. And then the back end of pattern number 2, this sort of cross sign, you can see the geometrical shape recurring in pattern number 3. And then you can see the tail end of pattern number 3 simply is the first part of pattern 4. The tail end of pattern 4 is the first part of pattern number 5. So by learning all 5 shapes, you basically get to know your entire fretboard on your guitar. So let's move on into how to practice this stuff and get this into more of a routine for yourself. I would suggest making a chart, sort of like a 5-day cycle that you're going to work within. Maybe give yourself a couple of days off. It's kind of intensive work, so it wouldn't hurt to have a couple of days off this stuff. But let's say you establish a 5-day practice cycle. Through the days, designate some keys that you're going to work on. Maybe day 1 you could do G major, C major, and F major. Then maybe day 2 you could do A major, D major, and I don't know, E major. Just cycle through all the keys eventually, though. And I want to go through sort of a good routine that you can do to really get these things into your playing. Now, first of all, I would suggest when you're just getting started into scale practice that you begin with just memorizing the shape. Just wholeheartedly get to know that shape. You don't have to have a metronome or any kind of timekeeping device, but just get to know that shape extremely well so that you don't have to look at any kind of diagrammatic drawing of the shape on a piece of paper or anything like that. You just have it memorized completely. So once it's at that level, what I would suggest to do is grab your metronome once it's memorized and turn it to maybe between 72 and 92. I have it at 72 here. And what I would suggest doing is, you probably don't have to do it on the quarter note because that's going to be pretty slow. But I would suggest maybe going into eighth notes at first and having a routine where you work on your eighth note pulse. And just go up the whole scale, down the whole scale. Then begin again, but do it as triplets. And go ascending and descending, that 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a kind of thing. And then move to the world of 16th notes. So now go 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a... And I think if you got 16th notes down to a pace of around maybe 92 to 100, eventually that wouldn't be too bad. You can certainly go faster, and also I would of course suggest, as your technique gets better, to move finally into 16th note triplets as well as 32nd notes. But you're probably going to want to spin that metronome down a little bit, because when you're doing, let's say, 32nd notes, you may want to be more in the 60s pulse rather than in the 90s, because it's pretty fast. So that would be sort of phase 1, is really getting them integrated, getting left and right hand coordination up there, all the dexterity up there between the hands. And then I would also suggest, as part of this practice, to move between shapes. So let's say you had pattern number 4 that you were going to ascend through, and then what I would suggest is go into pattern, like slide up, do a position shift, get into pattern number 5, and do a descending run through pattern 5. So you can go up pattern 4 and then down pattern 5. And then you can do it in reverse. You can go up pattern 5 and then come down pattern 4 and loop it. Then you can just move along the neck, go into the next position. And I'm just working along the neck here in G, but you can pick any key to do this with, of course. But let's say you go up pattern 5, and then just slide over and do pattern number 1. And then I came back around to the root of pattern number 5. So it's important that when you're working on these things as well, that you always begin and end on those circle dots, because they're giving you the layout of the scale to the proper key center and harmony. So let's say when you're working on pattern number 5, that would be considered a 4th string root scale. So you'd begin on the lower circle dot in the scale diagrams and go from that note up through the entire scale, back down, past the root, go to the lowest possible pitch, and then ascend again, finally resolving on the root there on the G. And it's not a bad idea to play the chord, for that particular position either. Find a voicing that you think sounds cool. Let's say if you're doing pattern number 4, go through the whole scale shape, and then maybe play a pattern of the chord. That sort of corresponds to the way the notes are laid out in that particular position. So and just continue this work along the whole fretboard. Keep moving along the neck and doing more and more key centers, and do this kind of connecting work quite a lot. Also, another good idea I'll pass along to you is to get involved in the world of sequencing. Sequencing scales is really vital. I think it's a great way to really burn in a scale into your memory. There's lots of popular ones. I'll talk about maybe a few here. The real popular ones are maybe diatonic thirds, where you're going from root to third, second degree to fourth, third degree to fifth, and so on. And then another good one is ascending intervals of fourths, so you're kind of traveling up 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you double back to the second tone, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6, just like that. So that's like an ascending fourths idea pattern. Then another one that's quite good I like to talk about sometimes is where you go up 3 notes and then double back to your root. And then so that would be like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, just that kind of cycle. So just keep, adding more sequences. There's lots. Yeah, I'm sure if you did a quick Google search on scale sequencing, maybe I'll even have to do a video one day about scale sequencing ideas. That's very good work for left and right hand coordination and building dexterity. Also building a very good awareness to the layout of the tones for the scale on the fretboard. So all that work is vital. Also, I want to bring up the importance of jam tracks, working on progressions in all kinds of styles. There's lots of jam tracks out there. I will include a G major. I've already picked one out. It's a G major jam track that I'm going to have on my website page that'll be dedicated to this video that we're doing. And it'll have the scale layouts. And it'll also have the concepts that we go over on sequencing. It'll contain a downloadable MP3 so that you can jam to this stuff. And it's just basically, there's quite a bit of work you can tell that you got to do, and it's kind of important that you get into a routine where you're applying it all sort of in an even setting, because it's all kind of integrated. This work is, once you get it going and you're playing, it just basically allows you to be, very free on the fretboard. So it's very important work. And it's also important that you sort of flip around from idea to idea as well, like the sequencing stuff, and then the ascending and descending movements along the neck, and playing over jam tracks. All this stuff it's all part of one big concept here. So anyway, what I also wanted to sort of wrap up with as well is how important it is as you're going through these basic scales of major, this is sort of our topic today, is how important it is to also start working at the almost pretty much same time on your pentatonics on your neck if you don't know them, and blues. That includes the blues scale for both major and minor. The major blues in the handout that I'll be having on this topic on my website page will be called the major pentatonic flat third, and also to study the corresponding arpeggios as well. So I'll include an arpeggio sheet also. If you're thinking about other ways of practicing, that could be a way to integrate arpeggios alongside of your scales. You could go through your scale, ascend and descend on it, and then go right into your arpeggios immediately. So you could do your scale, you could do your arpeggio, and then you could blast through maybe a quick sequencing idea, and maybe modify the type of duration, and perhaps even include one loop through a scale that's right alongside. Like if you went up pattern 4, maybe try going down pattern 5 with some of these ideas also. So as you're beginning to notice, it's a heck of a lot of work to really get a sense of complete freedom on the entire fretboard, and it will take several months just to kind of get started, and probably a couple of years before you feel like you never really encounter any kind of region or zone on the neck that makes you feel like you're going to clam up during a solo because you just don't quite know the notes that well in some particular region. So anyway, it's a huge topic, as you can tell. I may revisit it one day with another video just to sort of pick up where this one's leaving off. But tried to cover as much as I possibly could jam into this video here today. And I hope it helped out quite a number of people out there. And just want to say thanks again for the questions that are coming in. I really appreciate them. And until then, just keep practicing, keep jamming on this stuff, and we'll catch up with you on the next video. Thanks a lot.